Hello and welcome to the Pleasurepreneure podcast. This podcast will help you create what you desire in your business with pleasure. Whether that be calling in your ideal clients, making more money, or creating a balanced business-life blend. I'm your host, Regan Fig, pleasure and business coach, published author of A Mother's Pleasure, wife and mama to 3 little wildlings. However you're choosing to listen to this podcast, ask yourself, how can I make this more pleasurable? And do just that. I acknowledge the custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded and produced, the Wadi Wadi people of Dharawal land. Now, let's proceed with pleasure. So this is an Instagram live recording where I share with you how I launch with only small windows of time. It's both the mindset and the practical strategy pieces that are super simple but make such a huge difference. So if you share your expertise with your clients through coaching or mentoring, and you're launching a group program or a course or a new one-on-one coaching package, and you are like me and don't have a lot of time or even a full day where you can work, then listen in, because these are the mindset strategies and the practical pieces that will move the needle to creating your next successful launch. I want you to go to the show notes. You'll find a link for my free Launch Like a Pleasurepreneure experience. I've changed the structure of it. Ironically, as I was launching this Launch Like a Pleasurepreneure masterclass, I realized that I was just kind of following what I normally do. I normally share free masterclasses, multi-day masterclasses. That's what I love to do. And this time, I wasn't so aware that there was something else that was sparking my desire that looked a little bit different to running a free masterclass. So we have a little bit more time to dive deeper into sharing all about launching. So you're going to get so many launching gems from me over the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, I highly recommend you register for the Launch Like a Pleasurepreneure experience I'm going to be delivering, because whilst I'm being a bit secretive now, it is going to be worth your time and your energy and your attention. So make sure you sign up via the link in the show notes. It's going to be completely free. I'm going to be sharing with you how you can create your next 5-figure launch, prioritizing pleasure without the burnout. It's exactly how I launch like a pleasurepreneur and what I'm going to share with you.
Hello, welcome to this conversation on how to create a successful launch in small windows of time, which is just perfectly timed for me. I have just finished creating a 5-figure launch during a period that was 2/3 of school holiday time. So I had 3 weeks to launch the Pleasurepreneure Mastermind. The last 2 weeks of that launch was in school holiday time. So I had all 3 kids home. My husband was busy doing like a month long of these exams, working full time. Like, it was a lot, right? So I didn't do my due diligence of checking when school holidays were. And so what I decided to do is see how I could increase my capacity to create a successful launch in really small windows of time, right? Which is something that I have built my business on. I have built my business on little tiny windows of time. I'm talking like 10 minutes at the playground when my kids are entertained for a bit, or, hour nap times. I've been a stay-at-home mum since my eldest was born. He's now 8. I had 3 kids in 4.5 years, and I built my business in that time. I also wrote and published my book in that time too. So if you are feeling like, oh, I have this calling and this desire to create something, to share something, to sell something, but like, oh, I've only got these little windows of time, this is going to be a really helpful conversation for you. Now, you might not be launching a program as such, like I launched the Pleasurepreneure Mastermind. You might not have an offer to actually launch. You might just be talking about calling in clients for working with you one-on-one. You might also have a desire to create an additional type of like a project, whether it's writing a book or creating a course, creating and like designing a course. There might be something that you want to do but you feel as though these small windows of time are a disadvantage to you, or you're at least just trying to navigate how you can do it in these small windows of time. Yeah, so stick around for that conversation. I'm going to provide you with some really simple basics, but first I want to have some conversations that are a little bit more, probably not the kind of standard response of what you'd expect. Like, we're not going to be talking about like time management, that kind of thing. The reason being is because chances are, if it was simply about time management, you would be doing it already, right? The women who I work with, you are the people who are here listening to this, you are intelligent. You are an intelligent woman, right? I don't have to talk to you about time management. If it was about time management, you would be doing it already, right? But typically what it is about is some conditioning, lifetimes worth of conditioning. It also is, just trying to keep it light here. But yeah, there's a lot of conditioning, a lot of beliefs, like the belief that we can't build a business, have a successful launch, or it might be harder to do it in small windows of time, already tells me that there is some presuppositions, you're already assuming that this is a problem, and it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be. The first thing we're going to dive into, number one, if you've only got small windows of time and you're launching something, if you have this small amount of time, you want to make yourself very effective in the windows of time that you do have within this launch period. What stops us being really effective with that time is our own mind drama, right? And I'm saying this in a kind way. We all have mind drama. We can improve on our mind drama, and I can help you do that in coaching. And this is what my coaches have helped me with. I have my mind drama too. But if you are launching in small windows of time and you've got thoughts in your mind of I don't have enough time to get this done, or maybe it's that you've got kids at home and you start to work on something and then you get interrupted, or you thought you had some time to work on something and someone's sick and you've got to look after kids at home, right? I'm imagining, and going back to some past experiences of myself, having the kind of mind drama of ugh, this sucks, it's not working, I'm not going to get it right. Or maybe it is the kind of mind drama of I've launched this thing, and within that first kind of 24, 48 hours, you've been so excited and just you've got this shout it from the rooftops energy, but it doesn't seem reciprocated. And that can then really deflate you if you aren't conscious of what your mind is doing. Yeah. Our thoughts create certain kinds of feelings. Yeah, which then leads us to taking a certain type of action or inaction, which then leads to a certain kind of result. So if we've got this condensed amount of time to launch something, we want to make sure that in that time, we are on top of our mind. We are on top of our thoughts. We are examining and filtering our thoughts for anything that is unhelpful to release, and to keep the helpful thoughts that have us feel however it is that you want to feel when you're launching. Maybe that is confident, excited, grounded. Yeah, think of the feelings that you want to be feeling. We want to be filtering and examining those thoughts to see if they are contributing to us feeling that way. If they're not, we want to delete them. I often talk about my inner critic, Heather. I'm giving her a name. And Heather often provides me with some of those thoughts that are not helpful, that don't have me feeling excited and motivated and have that shout it from the rooftops energy. So I'll often think okay, Heather, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I am disregarding the information you're providing me with. It's the same kind of thing. Your brain is going to provide you with a bunch of thoughts, offer you these thoughts. You don't have to believe them. Yeah. So we will delete the ones that we don't like, that aren't helpful, that aren't contributing to us feeling empowered or grounded or excited, or however you want to feel in your launch period. We will keep the ones that are helpful, that lead to those kind of things. And we will also craft some thoughts that will lead to what it is we want to feel, that will lead to the action that we want to take or that we need to take in this launch period, and that will contribute to the result that we want to create, which is a successful launch. Now, obviously, you're going to need to decide what a successful launch looks like for you. I would highly recommend that you don't just base that on external metrics. Yeah, like sales, sign-ups. Think about those goals and have them as goals, and know that whatever you desire, you will achieve if you do not quit. It might not be this time, but if you desire it, it will happen. So I want you to, yes, consider what some of those indicators are for success that are external to you, external metrics, and also consider what some that are internal to you, right? So that might look like some of those really helpful indicators of success for me in this launch might look like finishing strong, even if I'm not creating the results that I want to create. Yeah, even if like I've got 2 days to go and I've only reached 50% of my target goal, or maybe like 5%. Yeah, like how can I keep taking action even though I'm not reaching I don't feel like right now I'm at the place that I want to be. So that could be one of those internal goals. Another one could be really honoring the time that you have specifically created and protecting that time in this launch period. So for me, when I realized 2 weeks out of 3 was going to be school holidays, all the kids at home, all with me, that looked like me going, okay, I think a successful metric for me in this launch is seeing it as a bit of a sprint and knowing that I can get up 2-3 mornings a week. I was getting up 2-3 mornings a week at about like 4:45 a.m., which is insane for me. I won't say insane because actually I was doing that every Friday morning to meet with my mentor, Sarah Plowman. She's in the US. So like if I wanted mentoring with her, I had to be up for a 4:30 a.m. call. And I loved it actually at that time. But I knew I'm not going to commit to that every day, and I'm not going to commit to that ongoing. That's not sustainable for me, nor is it something that I desire. Unless I'm like going somewhere exotic, I don't want to be getting up every day at 4 something. Yeah. So yeah, one of those internal metrics for me was, can I commit through this process of creating and protecting dedicated time for my work, for my launch? So I'm going to invite you to consider what are some internal and external metrics for defining what a successful launch is for you, right? Get clear on that before you begin. All right, so we want to make sure we're getting focused on, we're getting really kind of curious about what is going on in our mind. We want to ensure that we're being pretty selective with those thoughts that we are choosing to buy into and invest into. We want to delete the ones that aren't helpful, hang on to the ones that are, and craft some new ones if the ones that we're receiving from our brain aren't like super helpful, right? I can help you do that. This is what I love doing in coaching. Let me see what else there is, because I did write some notes. The other thing is, I want you to know that the time that you do have, those small windows of time within that launch period, within that condensed amount of time, small windows are not a disadvantage. Yeah. So if you're seeing that as a disadvantage, I would say that they are some of those thoughts that we can delete. Like if that's what you've got to work with, and maybe you are like me, finding a couple of little spots during the week where you can get up a bit earlier, but you've reached your capacity in terms of what you're willing to commit in terms of time or what's available to you, the next best thing to do is decide that those windows of time are an advantage, that they are absolutely perfect, the perfect amount of time and exactly what you need and require. That is absolutely enough to create the results that you want to create in this launch. Yeah, it does no help for you thinking that this is not good enough, right? We're already then starting on the back foot. And I want to provide you with some evidence of that being true. Now, chances are you'll probably be able to find some of this evidence yourself when you think about some small windows of time where maybe it's not to do with work. Maybe it's like, you've got some people coming over. You've got some friends coming over. We had some friends come over for dinner on Friday night. And I absolutely love it when I invite people over, because I know I'm like hours away from the power clean. I'm such a productive, efficient house tidier when I've got people coming over. And I think that's so great, because otherwise I would have spent, like, if I had the whole weekend, if we were having people come over on Sunday night and I had the whole weekend to tidy, I probably would have done the same amount of work, but it would have taken me all weekend. Now, there's an actual law that describes this, which is called Parkinson's law. Now, Parkinson's law, it means that your work stretches based on the time that you have. So again, if I had all weekend to tidy the house, this plant needs to move a little bit. If I had all weekend to tidy the house, then chances are it would have taken me all weekend. But if we're like, oh, we've got some friends coming over in a couple of hours, we're like, right, let's do a power clean. The other thing I can think of that might be helpful in terms of giving you an example is if you have, like, say you've got no kids all afternoon and you're going to be making dinner, you know, maybe then you would be looking through some cookbooks and doing some researches on recipes and, oh, what do you feel like? And then maybe you decide to go to your favorite, like, grocery store to get the different kinds of ingredients. Maybe you have to go to another one because you chose something that's a little bit more complex. Yes, you would end up making a meal, but chances are if you knew you just had 30 minutes to get a meal together, you would get it done, right? So this is Parkinson's law. The work stretches based on the time that you have. So if you have little windows of time, that's an absolute advantage, right? Number one, it gives you some time pressure, but it also means that you're probably going to get more done in those windows of time. Chances are you might get the same amount of work done in an hour that you might have got done if you had 3 hours. Yeah. So I see this as such an advantage, and it creates such efficiency.
Interrupting this episode with a freebie for you so that you can create a 5-figure launch whilst prioritizing pleasure without the burnout. Recently, I launched the Pleasurepreneur Mastermind, and 2 out of those 3 weeks of the launch were in school holidays with all 3 kids home with me full time. It was a major oversight, but I went with it. I created 5 figures from that launch, and I wrapped it up feeling excited and inspired and far from depletion. And when my clients started asking questions about how I was able to create that result with so many balls in the air and still feel good and resourced and enjoy the process dripping with children, I gave them my behind the scenes insight. And this is exactly what I have now packaged up and will be sharing with you. Head over to reganfig.com/launch or click the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back into it.
But if you're noticing that you're stuffing around, if you've got that hour, or you feel as though you're really quite flustered and then you sit down to do something and it feels like it's such a huge shift of energy, maybe from being with the kids or being at work all day to then sitting down with some peace and quiet to focus, can feel like such a huge shift. That is a skill that you'll get better and better at, right? You'll get better at doing that. Something that has been really helpful for me to embrace that transition is listening to binaural beats. That helps me focus. It's almost like it provides something in the background for my brain to focus on as well while I'm diving into whatever it is that I want to do. Yeah. And another piece that might stop us from being efficient with our time. So if we've got these windows of time, maybe we don't know what we're going to do in that time. Yeah. And so it might feel like if we don't have any direction, it's the difference between feeling as though you're swimming in a pool with lane ropes and you're like halfway down the lane, and then you look up and you're like, oh, I see the end of the pool. I see these lane ropes here. Right. I know exactly where I'm headed. Versus being out in the middle of the ocean, treading water, looking around 360 degrees, not knowing which direction to go in. Like, you're literally just treading water, right? When we have direction and when we know where we're headed, it's so much easier to maintain that focus and not be like looking around at what are other people doing? What are other people offering? How are other people talking about their offers? If you're finding that you are not making the most of that time, consider what are some things, like make it really simple. Maybe write a list of things that you want to achieve the next time you have a window open. I have a really, really complex system, which is, it's super basic. It is my notes section in my phone, which I just open up a page and it has a to-do list. And there could be 3 things on there. There could be 20 things on there. But ultimately, whenever I get time, I look at my to-do list. I'm usually led by what I desire, unless there's something that I've committed to that I need to finish. But ultimately, like, I'm good to go because I know what's coming. I know what I want to do next. I know what action needs to be taken. Okay, I feel like I went off on a bit of a tangent there, But yeah, small windows are not a problem, right? Our brain wants to tell us that there's so many problems, especially when we're launching, because we are perhaps doing something new or unfamiliar. We're kind of brushing up against our comfort zone. Maybe we're going beyond our comfort zone. So our brain is going to provide so many problems for us that aren't even problems. And one of those is probably going to be, well, you don't have enough time. You've only got small windows of time, blah, blah, blah. I don't see that as a problem. It's not a problem. Let me think if there's anything else. Otherwise, I'm going to dive into a few really simple, basic things that I'm going to invite you to consider and to weave into your launch so that it can be successful for you. One of the really kind of basic practical things that you can do is get prepared before you dive into a launch. And why this is related to me just winging it is because I have received that advice plenty of times and I do not take that advice. I don't take that advice to a certain extent because I like to be led by desire. I like to wing it. I like to respond to life each day. So what that looks like for me is, if you've been following along my Pleasurepreneur mastermind launch recently, it might look like I had a pretty kind of crafted maybe social media strategy per se, like a content strategy. I did not. I know the way I work really well is I filter life through whatever my focus is at the time, which is, I mean, I feel like there's some default lenses here, like pleasure. I have a lens for like what will bring me pleasure, how can I enjoy this? But when I was launching, I was relating life to being the pleasurepreneur you know that you can be. I was filtering life through a lens of succeeding in a group of women. I was filtering life through, you know, what lessons is life giving me that I can share that relate to being in a mastermind, getting coached by me. Yeah. So I love that. That's the way I work. So I'm also aware that it's really helpful for me to actually plan some things ahead of time. I didn't plan a lot. What I did do though is those early mornings when I was waking up, I was making like a really nice herbal tea, right? Because we've got to make it pleasurable. That's what makes it easeful. We make it pleasurable and it's also then attractive to us. We want to do that again because it feels pleasurable. But I'd be up in the mornings and I would be like planning some emails ahead of time. What they were, I would talk about when we're talking about repurposing. So there were some things I was planning ahead of time. You might like to draft out some emails. You might like to draft out some social posts. If you are someone who you do like to prepare what you can ahead of time. Now, you might remember before I did the Pleasurepreneur launch, I had a free week-long experience called the Pleasurepreneur Pathway. That was 5 days, I think, of live masterclasses and some Q&As. So that was a week-long experience. I had prepared a lot for that before I then went into the mastermind launch. Yeah, because I felt like that was part of, like, it was almost like the door opening into the launch of the mastermind. So I had prepared the daily automated emails. And I think that will weave us into the next thing I want to share with you. Okay, so prepare as much as you can or as much as you like. Number 2, automate it. Right? Anything that you can automate, do it. Apart from the fact that it's just easy and like you don't have to think about it, it also feels like you are being supported, right? If you are someone like me who is a one-woman show, it can feel as though you are all the hats in your business. You wear all the hats in your business. And unless you've got a coach or a mentor supporting you or a group of women like in my mastermind, you're probably going to feel not super supported. You're going to have to, support yourself through it. So I love to automate things, and I'm not just talking about in my business. I like to automate things in my life as well, just for the fact that it means that someone else is going to do that. Literally, I could hit send on a group email, like in my MailChimp, or I could set it up to send later on that afternoon when it tells me it's an optimal time. And I'm like, MailChimp's taking care of it for me. Or I can, same thing like with my dishwasher and washing machine, like anything I can automate, I will, because I'm like, they're taking care of it for me. This is like the most subtle mindset shift that adds to me feeling supported. Yeah. So automate anything that you can. And obviously if there's things that you can automate that will just make your life easier, do that, rather than just what I'm talking about here, like automate it so you don't have to press the button. There might be things that you can automate that create a really big difference. Okay, so we've talked about what can you do ahead of time, preparation and planning. What can you automate? So that could just be emails, it could be posts, it could be, I don't know, automating things outside of your business. Yeah, like automating, maybe some meals can get delivered, you know? And the next point is, what can you outsource? You'll be surprised what you can get done for you at a really affordable rate. Yeah. For example, when I did my audio book on my podcast, I recorded all of the chapters. So each episode was a chapter of the book, and I didn't edit and produce that. Yeah, I went onto Fiverr. Fiverr is amazing for this kind of thing. I went onto Fiverr and I got quotes and I asked people to help me. So I was able to get that edited and produced at like a really affordable cost. The other things that I've outsourced. So like in the Pleasurepreneur Mastermind launch, I outsourced the graphics, not all of them, just like the main graphic. So I had already had that done like 2-3 years ago, but I wanted it spruced up a little bit. So I just asked for that to be like redone for me the way I wanted it, which cost me $80, by the way. Like it was not a huge deal in terms of expense. And then you might be someone who you want to just like quickly draft up emails, and you might want to have a bunch ready to go, and you want someone to then say, edit your emails and set them up, get them ready to go for you. Like if there's things that you can outsource, absolutely do it. And again, like notice that this is a condensed period of time. This is kind of like a sprint. So you could just have someone help you with that for the, 3, 4, however many weeks that you are going to be launching. And then lastly, this is my favorite because it feels like so clever. It's like the work smarter, not harder. Like what can you repurpose? I love it so much. Okay, so what I repurposed in my last launch, the Pleasurepreneur Mastermind launch, was as I said, I would kind of, with my content, I would like filter through the lens of the mastermind. I would be responding to life as it arrived. And what I mean by that, by the way, is like when I was having that little bit of a mid-launch dip, I was like, this is going to be really helpful for my people. So I dived in to talk about like what we can do to experience more pleasure in that mid-launch dip in order to come out the other side, like to thrive through the mid-launch dip, right? So how I repurposed that was like, that's the conversation. What I did was I talked about it on my stories. I created like a carousel post, and you'll probably find that maybe like if you're watching the replay on here, it would be probably a couple of rows down. It'll say something like 5 ways to make the mid-launch dip pleasurable. I think that's how I titled it. So I did stories, I did a carousel post, I did a reel, and I also did an email. Yeah, so if you're on my mailing list and following me on socials, you might have seen all 4 of those things from the one topic. But chances are, knowing the algorithm, knowing how busy everyone is, knowing that just not all of you are like constantly watching my Instagram and what I'm up to, but knowing that I've got 4 pieces of content for, diving into the same kind of topic and providing value, chances are you're going to see at least one of them, right? Plus, it means that I'm not having to create 4 different kinds of content there. Yeah, like it's 4 different types, but it's the same kind of conversation. So see what you can repurpose. And I also love repurposing, particularly in this kind of a strategy, I suppose, or in this kind of way. I love it because it allows me to go deeper into what I'm talking about. It allows me to become more clearer and more helpful and more precise in what I'm saying, and therefore like who I'm speaking to. So there's some of the basics. What can you plan ahead of time? What can you outsource? What can you automate? What can you repurpose? I'm going to wrap it up there. There were a few other things that I wanted to talk about because I have a lot to say and a lot to share. Hence, this is my job. This is what I help people with. But I have an incredible coaching consult call with a wonderful woman in a few minutes' time. So I'm going to get off here now. Some of the other things that we were going to talk about was creating connection and getting really clear on who your ideal client is, so you speak directly to her or him or them, right? Because obviously a successful launch is when your ideal clients see that and say, yeah, she's talking to me. Oh my God, that is what I want. That is what I need. So we've talked about so many things. I think I will wrap it up there. Thank you for joining me. Now, if you know that you have got a launch coming, or if chances are like you've probably experienced a mid-launch dip as well. Again, like go to that post a couple of rows down and you might want to save it, and it gives you 5 ways to enjoy that process, to make it more pleasurable so that you can come out the other side. Come and work with me. Come and hire me as your coach so that you can experience incredible, successful launches in your business when you only have small windows of time. Let's not see it as a disadvantage. Let's embrace it as an advantage. Let's work on any of that mind drama so that you can cruise through that launch and be really effective with the time that you do have. We want to make it easeful and enjoyable, right? If you want to create, that's kind of like the whole summary of this conversation. If you want to create a successful launch in small windows of time, you need to make it easeful and enjoyable. And that is exactly what I help you with. We can organize a 60-minute consult call together. It's completely free. It's for me to explore with you what you want to achieve in your business, and for you to leave that call with a decision made as to whether you want to hire me or not. Yeah, you're going to leave that call so happy with your reasons for your decision and whether that's working with me or not. Yeah, you'll get so clear on that call as well. There's so much juice that you'll get just from that call alone, whether we work together or not. Let me know what you enjoyed from this, and that's all for now. Bye.